Shadowy and menacing castle, the Demon Lord prepares to launch his campaign to conquer the world. To aid him, he summons his 4 demonic generals, Ulmandra the Inferno, Sylphid the Storm, Gnome the Earthen Bastion, and, last but not least, the most jaded and soulless of them, all an underpaid Japanese salaryman. Denosuke began his career at the company as an unremarkable salaryman, filled with hope and confidence that he would eventually climb the promotion ladder. However, while Denosuke dedicated himself to working hard for the company, his co-workers focused on currying favor with the boss. As a result, they received the promotions Denosuke had been striving for, while he was unceremoniously sent to another country to assist with the company's expansion efforts. Upon arrival, Denosuke found that literally nothing was getting done because the site had no funding. He tried to convince his boss to approve more funding so they could buy the necessary equipment, but that would cost money, so his boss refused and yelled at him for wasting resources. The locals couldn't care less about the job if they weren't going to be given the necessary tools, so they left, leaving Denosuke to do everything by himself. Seeing how tirelessly Denosuke was working all on his own, the locals were inspired and eventually came back to assist him. With their help, he finally managed to get everything up and running. Just as he thought things were settling down, he received a call from his boss. Denosuke initially believed his efforts had finally been acknowledged and hoped for a well-deserved bonus. However, he couldn't have been more wrong. There wasn't even a token pizza party in his honor. Instead, all he got for his relentless hard work was even more work. His company decided to transfer him to yet another country for a different expansion project. By this point, Denosuke had begun to question his life choices, realizing that he was wasting his life for a company that clearly didn't care about him. While distracted by his existential dread, he wasn't paying attention to his surroundings and ended up getting run over by Moped Kun. That kind of explains how he ended up here. But Denosuke thinks there must have been some kind of mistake because there's no way the Demon Lord meant to summon a guy like him. The Demon Lord addresses Denosuke by name and informs him that he has been summoned to serve as his new overseas manager. The Demon Lord explains that he has thoroughly reviewed reports detailing Denosuke's relentless efforts, being assigned to his company's overseas branch, mastering the local language, and earning the trust of the locals to successfully establish the business. Based on these accomplishments, the Demon Lord is convinced that Denosuke is the ideal candidate to become one of his 4 elite generals. Denosuke is kind of happy since this is the first time anyone has actually acknowledged all the hard work he's been putting in. However, he's hesitant to accept the position of Demon General because that would technically mean betraying humanity. The Demon Lord mentions that the position comes with full workers' benefits, and suddenly, Denosuke doesn't think joining the Demon Army is such a bad idea anymore. Moreover, the Demon Lord genuinely values workers' rights, so he makes it clear that Denosuke won't be forced to take the job if he's not interested. This approach makes Denosuke feel even more inclined to join. Reflecting on his past, he recalls how poorly he was treated at his previous company, making him doubt whether someone like him is worthy of such an important position. Just as he's about to turn down the Demon Lord's offer, the Demon Lord interrupts, declaring that Denosuke shouldn't let the mistreatment he faced at his old workplace determine his self-worth. The Demon Lord reminds Denosuke that his old company was run by obnoxious, selfish managers who only cared about themselves and would never pay attention to all the work he was putting in behind the scenes. The Demon Lord won't make that mistake because he knows how valuable Denosuke is as an employee. Now Denosuke has a choice: go back to his old company and be treated like trash once more, or stay here and help build the Demon Army. Denosuke remains reluctant to accept, but before he can respond, Ulmandra suddenly speaks up, voicing her objection to the idea of a weak human joining the Demon Army. Sylphid and Gnome quickly chime in as well, doubting how someone like Denosuke could possibly be of any use. Acknowledging their skepticism, the Demon Lord decides to put Denosuke through a test to prove to the others just how capable he truly is. Denosuke starts freaking out, trying to explain to the Demon Lord that he has no powers and can't fight. But it's already too late. Ulmandra decides to attack him at full force to see what he's made of. She's heard something about otherworldly humans possessing special powers and tells Denosuke to try and stop her deadly kick. Just as the kick is about to land, the demon lord steps in and intercepts it. Olmandra, confused, asks why he stopped her, but the demon lord calmly explains that she didn't let him finish speaking and completely misunderstood the situation. He gestures toward poor Denisuk, who had been so terrified by the ordeal that he fainted from the shock. The others are surprised because Olmandra wasn't even trying that hard. For Denisuk to pass out from an attack like that, it makes it seem like he's just a regular human. The demon lord informs them that Denisuk truly is just an ordinary human, which only fuels the others' objections further. They argue that the demon army is entirely comprised of monsters, and if a human were to get involved in the ongoing power struggle between the demons and demi-humans, he would be devoured almost immediately. The demon lord acknowledges the existing friction among the factions within his army, but he insists that this is precisely why he needs Denisuk and the unique skills he brings to the table. He clarifies that he's not looking for someone with a durable body or immense attack power. Instead, what he values most in Denisuk is his ingenuity and resourcefulness. Just then, Denisuk finally regains consciousness and begins pleading for them to let him go because there's no way he can deal with attacks like the one Olmandra just tried to hit him with. The demon lord tells him to calm down and explains that he won't be expected to fight, but he does intend to give Denisuk a fitting exam. He explains that the demon army is currently trying to create a pact with the surrounding tribes. So far, they've managed to reach agreements with the salamanders and werewolves, but negotiations with the Minotaur tribe have been quite difficult. Denisuk's test will be to do whatever it takes to form a pact with the Minotaur tribe. With Denisuk's exceptional negotiation skills, the demon lord believes it should be straightforward to earn the trust of the Minotaurs and strike a peaceful agreement. Denisuk, however, fails to see anything simple about trying to negotiate with Minotaurs. Despite his doubts, the demon lord is confident in his abilities and encourages Denisuk to consult Olmandra if he has any questions. Afterwards, Olmandra leads Denisuk down the hall so he can begin negotiating with the Minotaurs. She thinks this is a huge waste of time since there's no way a human like Denisuk can negotiate with Minotaurs. Denisuk also thinks she's right about him being useless, but the demon lord seemed so sincere when he talked about how much he needed Denisuk. All Denisuk has ever wanted is to have his hard work recognized, so he wants to live up to the demon lord's expectations as much as he can. At that moment, Olmandra informs Denisuk that they've arrived at the meeting room where the Minotaur tribe's chief is waiting. Denisuk is taken aback by the enormous size of the room, but Olmandra explains that it's only natural since Minotaurs are such large creatures. As a word of caution, she warns him that Minotaurs are notoriously ferocious, and if he isn't careful, he might find himself trampled to death. As Olmandra opens the door, Denisuk has no idea what to expect from the Minotaur chief, but he intends to do his best to negotiate no matter what. However, once he actually sees the Minotaur chief, he freaks out. There's no way he could negotiate with someone like Tereus without instantly dying. Olmandra feels bad for him, so she offers to help with the negotiations, and Denisuk is really thankful for the help. But then he sees Olmandra start arguing with Tereus, and he gets the feeling that negotiations aren't going so well. Olmandra can't comprehend why Tereus is dissatisfied with everything they've offered him. Tereus claims that she doesn't understand what he's trying to say, and as a result, no progress is made on the pact. Frustrated, Olmandra leaves the meeting room. She struggles to understand why Tereus is now so resistant to the agreement, especially since he was initially open to the idea. Just as they were about to finalize the deal, he suddenly started shouting blah blah repeatedly, despite returning several times to see if he might change his mind. All Tereus ever says is blah, leaving Olmandra completely unable to figure out what he wants. Olmandra can't possibly see a resolution, so she's going to leave the rest for Denisuk to figure out. Although she fully expects him to fail miserably, Denisuk starts having a full-on panic attack because he thinks there's no way to get around this mess. As he's walking through the halls trying to figure out what to do, he spots a bar sign and decides to head in to clear his head. The bartender hands him a warm towel to help him relax, and Denisuk orders a drink as he takes a seat to gather his thoughts. He wants to focus on the negotiations, but he feels stuck since there's little he can do if the client outright refuses to negotiate. However, as he reflects, Denisuk begins to suspect that Tereus might not actually be rejecting the negotiations entirely. He recalls a similar experience from his past, where a client kept saying no, but by carefully reading the client's eyes, he was able to discern their true intentions, ultimately leading to a successful agreement for both parties. Now Denisuk knows what he needs to do. He finishes his drink and heads outside to do what businessmen do: negotiate. Meanwhile, Olmandra is back in the Demon Lord's throne room giving a report about her conversation with Tereus. It didn't lead to any meaningful breakthrough, so she doesn't think Denisuk will be able to achieve anything either, especially since he just arrived in this world today. The Demon Lord, however, still believes in Denisuk and urges Olmandra to wait and see what he's capable of achieving. Though Olmandra doesn't understand what the Demon Lord sees in Denisuk, she decides to check on him to ensure he's doing all right. When she finds him, he's busy stuffing several bags full of hay. Curious, she asks what he's up to, and Denisuk explains that he's preparing to have a proper conversation with Tereus. She tries to tell him that it's pointless since Tereus isn't willing to negotiate, but Denisuk still thinks there's a chance. He just needs to look Tereus in the eyes and convey his emotions properly so the two of them can understand each other. Olmandra observes that Denisuk seems much more confident than before, and this time, he enters the meeting room to speak with Tereus without a trace of fear. The next morning, Olmandra goes to the meeting room to check if Denisuk has survived the night. However, when she peers inside, she's met with the sight of a room filled with hay, but neither Denisuk nor Tereus is anywhere to be found. At first, she thinks the negotiations must have failed, leading to a massive fight, but just then, Denisuk comes in and tells her everything is fine. In that case, she wants to know why there's hay all over their sacred demon castle, and more importantly, she asks where Tereus went. Denisuk tells her that Tereus is currently finalizing the pact agreement with the Demon Lord. Olmandra is stunned that Denisuk managed to secure Tereus's agreement in just one night. Denisuk explains that all he did was take the time to understand Tereus better, which made the negotiation process surprisingly simple. Olmandra had assumed Tereus was refusing to negotiate because he kept shouting blah repeatedly. However, as it turns out, Tereus actually believed the negotiations were progressing smoothly all along. Denisuk had experienced something like this before with an international client. The client in question was really enthusiastic about saying no to him. So Denisuk thought the negotiation was going to end in failure, but to his surprise, the man then reached out for a handshake, and he realized it was all a misunderstanding. The same thing applied to Tereus. Denisuk took some time to research Minotaur culture and discovered that Minotaurs always bring hay with them to use as bedding whenever they visit someone else's home. It turned out that Tereus had been trying to request his hay all along. Once Denisuk realized this, the negotiation proceeded without any further issues. Now, Olmandra realizes that she had misunderstood Tereus and left him in that room to sleep on the cold floor, so she feels really bad. But Tereus tells her it's all right since it was an honest mistake, and he shakes her hand to show that there are no hard feelings. As Tereus departs, the Demon Lord approaches Denisuk and Olmandra. He asks Olmandra if she now understands why he's so eager to have Denisuk join their ranks. Olmandra concedes that Denisuk truly has remarkable skill when it comes to negotiations, having successfully passed the Demon Lord's test. Denisuk is officially appointed as one of the Demon Lord's 4 generals. To mark this new position, the Demon Lord places a bracelet on Denisuk's arm as a symbol of his authority. As a gesture of her newfound respect for Denisuk, Olmandra formally introduces herself and expresses her eagerness to work alongside him as a new friend. Denisuk is gradually finding his footing as one of the demon generals. It's a relief that he now has his own office and a boss who seems supportive, but it's clear this new environment will take some time to adjust to. Now that his position as one of the demon generals is official, Denosk decides it's only right to formally introduce himself to the others. With that in mind, he makes his way to Sylphid's room and gives a knock at the door. To his surprise, it's a girl who answers and asks him what he wants. Denosk explains that he's here to introduce himself to Sylphid. However, the girl responds curtly, informing him that she's Sylphid's assistant and that Sylphid is a very busy man, so she can't allow Denosk to bother him. Denosk is disappointed, but knew he was bound to face some pushback from the other demon generals. He decides to just come back later to try again. However, before he could leave, Olmandra comes running up to him because she has something important to say. The Demon Lord has another assignment for Denosk, so Denosk goes to meet with him immediately and is informed of an agreement he is working on for the demon army to grow in strength. He needs the support of all the surrounding demi-human nations, and among all those nations, the Ogre tribe is particularly influential. Their military strength rivals that of the demon army, making them a potential threat to the demon empire if they were to turn hostile. For this reason, the Demon Lord is aiming to hold merger negotiations with them to unite their forces. However, the ogres are famously difficult to bargain with, and so far, no agreements have been made. Even so, with Denosk handling the matter, the Demon Lord is confident that an agreement can be reached, which is why he's granting Denosk full authority over the negotiations. While Denosk is grateful for the Demon Lord's trust in him, he can't ignore the very real danger of potentially losing his life to the ogres if he goes alone. Olmandra volunteers to escort him to the Ogre tribe. However, before that, Denosk says he wants to go meet with Gnome since she's in charge of the demi-human division of the demon army, and she might have some valuable information about the ogres. Olmandra thinks Denosk is right, but absolutely refuses to go anywhere near Gnome because she has beef with her. So, instead, she says she'll go check on the carriages while Denosk talks with Gnome. Denosk makes his way to the training grounds, where Gnome is conducting her daily training session. He is thoroughly impressed by what he observes. Not only are Gnome's soldiers highly skilled in combat, but she also excels at keeping their morale exceptionally high. After the training concludes, Gnome turns her attention to Denosk and inquires about the reason for his visit. Denosk explains that he is there to ask if she has any information about the Ogre tribe. Gnome admits she doesn't know much, but mentions that their leader, Augur, is infamous for being incredibly difficult to engage in conversation. She warns Denosk that negotiating with him will be a significant challenge. Unfortunately, she explains, there's little she can do to assist in this matter. Besides, she has no interest in collaborating with Olmandra under any circumstances, so she firmly asks Denosk to take her away from there. Denosk didn't even realize Olmandra had been standing behind him, so he asks her why she's here and why she's so angry. Olmandra says she already finished checking the carriages, so she came to get Denosk since she was worried about him, but she can't contain herself after seeing Gnome. The two start arguing, and Denosk is starting to get worried about how much Olmandra and Gnome hate each other. Denosk and Olmandra finally reach the Ogre castle, but before they can go inside, they are halted at the gate and informed that they must wait for Chief's permission to enter. Olmandra finds it absurd that they are being left outside for so long. But Denosk, having encountered this tactic before, realizes that Augur is deliberately using the delay to unsettle them and weaken their ability to negotiate effectively. He knows it's crucial for them to remain composed. However, Olmandra is barely managing to contain her growing fury and seems ready to lose her temper. Thankfully, before she can act out, Augur's assistant comes out and tells the two that they may now enter. As they walk in, Denosk notices how scruffy Augur's armor looks. Eventually, they make it to Augur's throne room and come face to face with Augur himself. But when Olmandra tries to start the negotiations, he tells her to shut up. He doesn't care why they are here, because he's never going to listen to what they have to say unless, of course, they came to surrender to him, in which case he might hear them out, but only if they agree to kill their chief, the Demon Lord. Olmandra can hardly believe the sheer absurdity of what just came out of Augur's mouth, and she's seconds away from losing it completely. However, Denosk quickly grabs her hand, urging her to stay calm, reminding her that a violent reaction is precisely what Augur is trying to provoke. Turning to Augur, Denosk speaks in his most composed and professional tone, stating that he and Olmandra are stepping outside for a quick discussion. Once they're outside, Olmandra unleashes her fury, ranting about Augur's audacity and cursing his very existence for daring to say such a thing. She's absolutely ready to march back in and rip him apart, but Denosk manages to steady her, reiterating that reacting to Augur's provocation is playing right into his hands. He is intentionally saying things to get them angry in hopes that they cause a scene so negotiations break down. That way, he can avoid directly rejecting the negotiation and blame its failure on the two of them. Now that she knows what Augur was trying to do, Olmandra decides to calm herself down. But she's still really frustrated by the fact that Augur insulted the Demon Lord. To be honest, Denosk is just as angry, but acting on that anger would only hurt their chances of success here, so they have to be careful about how they respond. That said, Augur has no intention of negotiating, leaving them with few options at this stage. At that moment, the girl they encountered earlier appears and introduces herself as Olulu, Augur's daughter. Acknowledging that her timing might seem impolite, she hesitantly makes a request. She asks for Denosk and Olmandra's assistance in handling her father. Olulu then guides them to a vacant room, explaining that it serves as the food cellar, and as they can plainly see, it's completely empty. The ogres are known for their strength and influence among the demihumans, but recently they've run into financial trouble, and it has gotten so bad that a lot of their people are struggling to find food to eat. Denosk assumes something like this was going on because when they came in, he saw the terrible state of the ogre's equipment along with the cold and empty feeling he got from the castle itself. This kind of situation usually occurs when large companies begin to decline. They make it seem like everything's going well, but on the inside, they are constantly on the brink of bankruptcy. That's exactly what's going on with the ogre tribe, and Olulu believes that the only way to rebuild it is to rely on the demon army's help. Her father, however, refuses to listen to her, and to make matters worse, he's currently ill. They've been trying to keep his condition a secret, which is why they had Olmandra and Denosk wait outside earlier while they prepared him for the meeting, but his health is steadily deteriorating. Augur doesn't have much time left, and if he were to die under the current circumstances, it would spell disaster for their tribe. Desperate, she begs Denosk for his help. While Denosk acknowledges her concerns, he also reprimands her for divulging such critical information. As the chief's daughter, she needs to exercise greater caution when deciding who to trust. Olulu can tell that Denosk is a good person. She's pretty confident in her ability to discern the nature of people, which is why she told him about the situation. Now, she asks Denosk to help her save the ogre tribe by marrying her. After hearing this, Denosk freaks out, and Olmandra begins burning with rage. But Olulu is serious about her proposal. All the ogres in her tribe are as dumb as rocks, so the only way for Olulu to ensure the prosperity of the tribe is for a smart guy like Denosk to marry her and become the new chief. Denosk attempts to dissuade Olulu from making any hasty decisions, but she's adamant that this is the only way to save the ogre tribe. She's even ready to make their marriage official on the spot, but Olmandra steps in and prevents it from happening. Later that evening, Denosk finds himself in his office, grappling with the predicament he's in. Augur refuses to negotiate, and Olulu is determined to marry him. Failing his second mission for the Demon Lord is not an option, so he decides to retreat to the bar in his mind to clear his thoughts. This time, however, Denosk isn't alone. His imaginary version of Olmandra is seated at the table next to him, engaged in a lively debate with the bartender over which is cooler, gorillas or lions. Realistically, a gorilla could wipe the floor with a lion any day, but Olmandra argues that lions are cooler because a group of them is called a pride. The moment Denosk hears this, he snaps out of his trance, and suddenly, he has a brilliant and foolproof plan to tackle the situation. The first thing the next morning, Denosk calls Olmandra outside. He apologizes for waking her up so early, but explains that he needs her help for a new negotiation plan. For Denosk's plan to work, they need to go somewhere else first. If all goes well, Augur will be the one begging for a negotiation meeting. 1 week later, Denosk and Olmandra are called into the chief's throne room, just as Denosk had planned, and Augur looks pretty mad. Augur has just learned that all the neighboring tribes have allied with the demon army over the past week, and he demands an explanation. A week earlier, Denosk had shared his strategy with Olmandra. Rather than focusing on convincing Augur, they would first recruit the smaller tribes. It wouldn't be too difficult since, like Augur's tribe, the other tribes were also grappling with food shortages, making them susceptible to the promise of support. While Olmandra grasped the logic behind Denosk's plan, she hadn't anticipated it would succeed so effectively. By forcing Augur into negotiations, Denosk's strategy mirrored what he used to do when selling products back on Earth. If he tried to approach a big company directly, he would usually be rejected. Instead, he would market to smaller companies first, and eventually, the big company would be forced to contact him to avoid being left behind. Similarly, if all the surrounding demihumans joined the demon army, the prideful chief wouldn't let that go unanswered. For the moment, Denosk feigns ignorance, claiming he merely proposed an alliance with the smaller groups to help them survive by gaining the demon army's support. This explanation only fuels Augur's anger further, as he never authorized any negotiations. Everything is unfolding perfectly, though, because with Augur now visibly agitated, he becomes far more vulnerable to Denosk's negotiation techniques. Denosk then calmly reveals that these alliances weren't orchestrated by him alone, he had Olulu's assistance. Augur can't believe that his own daughter would betray him like this, but she tells him it was necessary for the sake of their ogre tribe. The only way out of their current situation is to rely on the demon army's aid. As much as he may not want to admit it, times have changed. He's grown old and is currently sick, so they need to join the demon army to survive. Just then, Denosk chimes in and offers an alternative to Augur. Instead of joining the demon army, they could form an equal partnership. Truthfully, Denosk is making this up. He hasn't altered a single detail of the agreement. However, by presenting it as an equal partnership, it appeals to the pride of the ogre chief, making him far more likely to consider it. As anticipated, Augur doesn't appear entirely against the idea, but requests some time to mull it over. A couple of days later, Olmandra comes running into Denosk's office to share the good news. She tells Denosk that Augur has agreed to the alliance with the demon army. While this is great news, Denosk has more pressing matters to handle. The demon lord told him to pick out an assistant, so he has been reviewing applications. Honestly, he wishes he could just pick Olmandra since she's so reliable. Olmandra misunderstands this as a proposal and becomes a little embarrassed. At that moment, there's a knock at the door. Denosk opens it to find Olulu standing there. She announces that she's come to act as a representative of the ogre tribe in their alliance with the demon army. Expressing her deep gratitude, she explains that her father has become far more diplomatic since their encounter. To show her appreciation, she says she's willing to do anything to repay him. Taking her at her word, Denosk asks if she would like to become his personal assistant. Olulu eagerly agrees, but this makes Olmandra jealous, and she pointedly avoids making eye contact with Denosk. She reminds herself that they're supposed to be rivals, which means she can't allow herself to be friends with him. Denosk has no clue why Olmandra suddenly started behaving so oddly. That aside, it's been a successful month for him. The demon army has expanded significantly. However, with growth comes heightened risk, so it's essential for everyone to remain vigilant. A few days go by, and Denisuk is busy working in his office as usual when Olulu enters and informs him that she has successfully negotiated with a werebear tribe. Just as he had requested, she explains that as long as their conditions are met, they are willing to support the demon army. Denisuk is pleased to hear that the talks with the werebear tribe went smoothly, but Olulu has something else to share. She mentions that word has gotten around about Denisuk being recognized for all the effort he has been putting in, and that an award ceremony will be taking place soon. She adds that she'll give him more details once his lunch break is over. Denisuk has no clue what kind of award awaits him, but knowing the demon lord, he's confident it will be something far more exciting than a simple pizza party. At that moment, Olmandra walks into Denisuk's office, bringing lunch for the two of them to share, as they always do. While Denisuk enjoys eating with Olmandra, he despises the fact that the demon army's menu is limited to plain porridge. He understands the challenges of providing meals for an entire army, but he can't help but wish for some meat to accompany the bland porridge. Hearing Denisuk's complaints, Olmandra comes up with the perfect idea. idea. If he wants meat, then they'll just have to go straight to the source to get it. Denisuk isn't thrilled about the idea of going hunting just to satisfy his craving for meat. But that's not the only reason Olmandra brought him out here. It turns out she received a request from the nearby demi-human tribes, asking for help in dealing with a magical beast that has been attacking them in this forest. So far, this creature has killed 5 orcs, and Denisuk finds that absolutely awful. Olmandra, however, has a different perspective. She explains that it's only natural for the weak to fall prey to the strong. Ordinarily, it would be the responsibility of the orc tribe to protect themselves from threats like this, but the beast they're facing is far too powerful for them to handle. Not wanting to see the orc tribe wiped out, Olmandra decided to take on the task herself. Speaking of which, Olmandra notices some mushrooms growing under a tree. From what she was told, all the orcs that got eaten were attacked while picking these mushrooms since they are a valuable ingredient. Therefore, the magical beast must be camping somewhere around here. If they wait long enough, then it's sure to attack. Evidently, they didn't have to wait long since the boar shows up behind them almost immediately. Olmandra tells Denisuk to run for cover while she handles this. She jumps into the air and heel kicks the boar's face into the ground. But in retaliation, the boar starts using its horns to throw rocks at Olmandra, although she can easily dodge them. Denisuk can't, so he's freaking out. The boar charges forward, crashing through trees and heading straight for Denisuk. Before it can reach him, Olmandra delivers a solid punch to the boar's stomach. From Denisuk's vantage point, it's obvious that Olmandra is incredibly strong, but none of her hits so far have been lethal. In an ordinary fight, that might not matter, but their goal here is to hunt the creature. What Olmandra is missing right now is the killing power needed to finish the job. The boar's sharp tusks make it a dangerous opponent, and one mistake on Olmandra's part could prove fatal. Her attacks are causing blunt force damage, but she needs to wrap this up quickly. Denisuk thinks she needs a weapon. He was right about Olmandra's blows not being strong enough to kill this thing as she is now. However, she has been holding back so far. She doesn't like using her true power because it takes a long time to recover from the effects, but she won't be able to kill this thing otherwise. The boar tries charging at her again, but this time Olmandra is able to stop it with one hand. She could easily kill it with a single punch right now, but that might ruin its meat. So instead, she picks it up and snaps its neck. With the boar now defeated, Olmandra tells Denisuk that they can finally have some meat. However, Denisuk has completely lost his appetite. Together, they haul the boar's body to the orc village to show the villagers that the threat has been taken care of. The villagers are incredibly thankful for Olmandra's help and amazed that she managed to take down the boar all by herself. While Olmandra is clearly enjoying all the admiration, she notes that it's not every day they come across so much meat. She decides to invite the entire village to share the boar with her. The villagers are all excited, but Denisuk can't believe they are actually okay with eating boar meat when that thing was one evolution cycle away from being their next door neighbor. However, he's even more surprised when he hears Olmandra say she's going to cook the meat. He asks her if she's really serious about cooking, so Olmandra offers to give him a taste of her homemade delicacy. Denisuk starts to feel genuinely excited as Olmandra hypes up the meal, making it sound amazing. However, when he asks how she plans to prepare it, she simply throws a fireball at the meat. The result is a blackened lump of burnt flesh, and the expression on Denisuk's face makes it clear this is absolute garbage. Olmandra insists he give it a try, claiming it's better than it looks. But when Denisuk takes a bite, it tastes just as awful as it appears. It's like someone dumped molten tar into his mouth, and he'd honestly prefer to starve than endure another bite of this disaster. Olmandra tells Denisuk it's rude to insult someone's cooking like that, but Denisuk retorts that it's rude to call what she just did cooking. He has been enduring the culture shock of living in a new world so far, but this is too much for him to handle. He asks if everyone can let him handle the cooking from now on. Once Denisuk is done preparing the meat, Olmandra takes one bite and realizes it actually tastes amazing. She asks Denisuk what he did, and he explains that first, he soaked the pork in water to get all the blood out. Then, he slow roasted it over a fire to remove the excess plus fat, and finally added it to a soup to get rid of any bad smells. Denosuk suggests teaching the villagers if they're interested in learning, and they're thrilled that one of the demon generals is showing such thoughtfulness. However, Olmandra feels that someone of Denosuk's rank shouldn't be wasting time teaching villagers how to cook. Denosuk disagrees, explaining that his role is to improve the demon army, and a key part of any civilization's progress lies in advancing their culinary skills. He points out that when people have regular access to meat, they naturally find ways to enhance its flavor. But since meat is such a rarity here, no one has the luxury to experiment. In other words, this country is both impoverished and lacking in culinary knowledge. It might sound harsh the way Denosuk says it, but Olmandra can't deny that he's right. This country is largely barren and, compared to its neighboring nations, it's relatively weak. That's precisely why they need to put in the effort to bring about change as part of the Big Four. With their work here finished, Olmandra suggests they head back to the castle. But Denosuk isn't so sure it's a good idea since night has already fallen. Olmandra reassures him that it won't be an issue, as she can light their way with a fireball. She's really proud of her magic prowess since it's an ability unique to demons, and Denosuk is quite impressed. It also makes sense why demi-humans, who can't use magic, train day in and out to become effective fighters, while demons like Olmandra can rely solely on their magic. However, he thinks Olmandra could stand to improve her combat techniques a little. For instance, even though her attack power rises dramatically when she uses her true power to transform her body, it takes a while for her body to recover afterward. He suggests that she should bring a weapon to help with combat next time and also wear armor that covers more of her body. As soon as Denosuk says this, Olmandra freezes in place and extinguishes her light, while she recognizes that he might be right. His fixation on efficiency comes across as deeply insulting to her. Too angry to stay near him, she decides to leave Denosuk behind in the forest. Denosuk, confused about why she got so upset, quickly comes to the realization that lingering in this forest is a surefire way to end up as prey. Without wasting any more time, he bolts back to the orc village for safety. The next morning, Denosuk meets with the Demon Lord to give a report on the mission, and the Demon Lord congratulates him on his success. However, he also mentions that Olmandra returned last night, while Denosuk only arrived this morning with an escort from the orcs. The Demon Lord wants to know if something bad happened between him and Olmandra. Denosuk breaks down and says he's not worthy of being one of the demon army's generals. The Demon Lord urges Denosuk to calm down and explain what happened. So Denosuk recounts the entire situation. Recognizing that Denosuk unintentionally upset Olmandra, the Demon Lord emphasizes that the priority now is to mend their relationship for the good of the demon army. He gives Denosuk an official order to find a way to make amends with her. However, that's easier said than done. Denosuk remembers how proud Olmandra was when she mentioned that only demons are capable of using magic, but he suspects there's more to it than just that. Determined to find a solution, he begins reading a demon history book to gather some insight. Denosuk soon finds a chapter talking about how a strong physique is essential for a demon's magic power. This is why demons take great pride in their bodies and often wear extremely revealing clothes. Denosuk now understands why Olmandra got so upset when he told her it would be more efficient to wear armor that covers her body more. He was basically rejecting her pride as a demon. Even if he knows why she got mad, he has no idea how he's going to repair their relationship. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Olulu has just finished chopping firewood for the day and is preparing to move on to her next task. She's stunned to suddenly find herself facing a threatening wall of despair. Olmandra, still upset over what happened with Denosuk, runs up to Olulu in tears, crying that Denosuk hates her and refuses to appreciate her body. Olulu has no idea what's going on at first, but after Olmandra explains what happened, she realizes where the misunderstanding might have come from. She tells Olmandra that, as a human, Denosuk's values are a lot different from theirs. In particular, Olulu knows that Denosuk doesn't think exposing your body is a good thing. Olmandra can't believe it since she's been exposing her body to him for weeks, and he never complained about it. Olulu explains that Denosuk likely assumed Olmandra was just some kind of exhibition exhibitionist, which is why he never brought it up. Hearing this, Ulmandra suddenly realizes that if Denisuk was uncomfortable with her exposed body, then all the physical gestures of affection she had shown him might have seemed like inappropriate behavior. Overwhelmed with embarrassment and anger at herself for abandoning Denisuk in the forest, she begins slamming her face into the floor repeatedly. Olulu pleads with her to stop, worried that the floor won't be able to withstand much more of her outburst. Ulmandra asks Olulu for advice on what she should do now since she got mad at Denisuk for no reason. Olulu tells her about a discussion she had with him when she first became his assistant. He told Olulu that he wanted her to stay true to her desires no matter what because he wanted her to feel free to talk about any troubles she had so they could come to a solution together, regardless of any misunderstandings. Olulu is sure Ulmandra can make up with Denisuk as long as they talk it out. Denisuk and Ulmandra eventually cross paths in the castle stairwell, each with something important to get off their chest. Ulmandra blurts out that she's not trying to act like an easy girl. She just wanted him to compliment her body. At the same time, Denisuk admits that he thinks her body is attractive. They both pause for a moment to process each other's words, and realizing they're finally on the same page, Denisuk takes the opportunity to apologize. He confesses that he didn't know much about demons and hadn't understood that his words would come across as offensive to her. Ulmandra accepts his apology and also apologizes to Denisuk. She acknowledges that it wasn't his fault that he didn't know about demon culture, and even if she was mad, she shouldn't have left him alone in the middle of the forest. Denisuk did nearly die because of that, so Ulmandra feels really guilty, but since he ended up being okay, Denisuk says he forgives her. He's glad they were able to make up. And now that they've gotten the chance to learn a little about one another, Denisuk thinks they can become great partners, although he still doesn't realize that Ulmandra interprets the word partner as a marriage proposal. Later, the Demon Lord summons all his subordinates for an important announcement. With alliances now established among the various tribes, the demon army has become significantly stronger than it was before, and it's all thanks to the tireless efforts of his newest general, Denisuk. To honor his accomplishments, the Demon Lord presents him with a magic stone. Denisuk feels deeply honored to receive such a priceless gift, but he humbly declines, explaining that he didn't achieve this alone. None of it would have been possible without Ulmandra's unwavering support by his side. Denisuk steps up to Ulmandra, kneels before her, and asks her to accept the magic stone alongside him. While Ulmandra is thrilled, she also panics because Denisuk is doing this in front of a crowd with so many onlookers. What Denisuk doesn't realize is that presenting a magic stone to a woman is essentially a marriage proposal in this world. So, without even knowing it, he just proposed to her in front of all the leaders of the demon army. The only reason Ulmandra doesn't immediately say yes is that she's too embarrassed by all the eyes on her. Watch this next video on screen and subscribe to not miss next part.